Well, I've drawn peg 31, that is a permanent peg, and above anything else I've heard that at least it's comfortable. Hopefully there's going to be some skimmers there, that's what I'm going to fish for. But there are loads and loads of small fish topping down here at this bottom end, so I've got about another 10 pegs to go, so I'll see you down at the peg. Well, I was told it was a comfortable peg. That's all right. There are some steep banks on some of these pegs here, but this is not one of them, so at least it's nice and comfortable. I don't know how much daylight we're going to get today. It's really cloudy, but that means, you know, it's very mild as well, which feels nice. There are lots of fish topping down there. We haven't seen any fish topping up at this top end, but it's not those little roach that I'm after, so I'm going to get settled, get comfortable down there. The water clarity looks quite clear. It's a normal river, so the level's normal, so there's no extra water in, which would normally suit skimmer fishing. But I'm sure there's going to be some out there, so I'm going to get set up and get comfortable. I've got to admit that took ages to get my box in. It is in. It's a bit rocky down there. Some pegs are suited to some boxes, some aren't. A lot of people carry platforms on here. I don't like carrying a platform on here. You know, when I'm feeder fishing, I don't feel I need it, although it would have been an advantage. So that's in, it's nice and steady. So I'm going to get some ground bait mixed up. I've only got 2 or 3 baits for today. I'm going to keep it really nice and simple. I'm going to fish 1 line, 1 rod. I'm going to get the ground bait mixed up now. We've got about an hour now. We're fishing 10 till 3. So it's just going to be a 1 mix job today. I have brought some leam and some soil as well. I've been told it's probably going to fish hard. If you land on a few skimmers, then that's obviously going to be a different story. So that is the mix I'm going to be mixing. I'm going to be using it on its own. I did bring some soil. I've got some soil in there. I've got some leam as well. That's where I was going to cut the actual mix with, but I'm not going to go down that route. I'm just going to go down a ground bait route. So like I said, I'm just going to fish down 1 hole today, so it's going to be very important that I pick that right line. Now, I haven't got any local knowledge on this particular stretch just here. I'm not quite sure what the line to fish is going to be. However, this is deep water, and I'm a massive believer that, you know, if the fish are off bottom or within the area, you can almost draw fish down. So I'm not sure it's that critical, especially when there's such little flow. So what I'm going to do is just get a bomb out there, just pick a range that looks about right. But then the key thing as well is to make sure it's nice and clear on the bottom. Venues like this, where there's loads and loads of trees, over the years, as you can imagine, there's branches, there's twigs out there, there's all sorts. It's a river. So the key thing is, once I'm happy with the range, I just want to make sure that it's nice clean bottom, and once I found that spot, I'll go to the sticks, find out exactly what that range is, so that if I've got to take the clip off, I can go straight back to that same spot. That's exactly 19 metres. Well, that's it, I'm all settled. Just got 1 rod set up, like I said, it's 11 foot, fishing a commercial feeder, just because it's got a little bit of backbone, but there's very little flow here. If you keep hearing that noise in the background, quite a long way upstream, I've been told it's a quarry. They're actually blasting rock out of a quarry, so I think that'll be going on all day, so now you know what that is. It's very flat calm, as you can see. Weight wise, I think really realistically the target is going to be about, I've got to say £10. However, I don't think £10 will win the match. A good friend of mine, Andy Clark, he's on the downstream end peg 1, which you may have seen in one of my videos where I caught some bream. That tends to produce better when there's extra water in, but Andy knows the river really well. He's very, you know, he's a great river angler, so I think there's going to be, you might need £15–20 to win the match, but the target is going to be £10. And the thing to that is today, I don't know if that's going to be made up of lots of small fish or it could be some better skimmers or bream. Alright, the last time I was here was about 8 months ago in a match. I drew the downstream end peg, which at the time was about peg 5, and I ended up winning the match with just over £10, and I didn't have a fish bigger than that. It was just £10 of bits. So that's what the first half hour is going to be about, seeing if it's going to be a small fish day, see if there are lots of small fish out there. If it is, I'm going to catch what I can, but if there aren't small fish there and it looks like we're going to need better stamp fish, then I'll change my approach accordingly. But this is one of those matches where you don't know what's going on around you. It really is like you're sat pleasure fishing, but I mean, it's such a lovely stretch of river to be sat on, so it feels as though you're pleasure fishing. So I can just about see the net of the next angler to my left, but I can't see anybody upstream. That's upstream, the river's going that way, so it's just really going to be a case of getting your head down and catching what you can. That's what it is. But like I say, realistically the target initially is going to be £10, so I'm not going to put any initial feed in. I'm just going to fish from the first cast and build it up that way, and just get a feel for it for that first 30 minutes. I want to kick off quite positive. I might end up with a 16 on, and to be honest, that is the size hook that I've caught on before, but we don't know what to expect. So I'm going to kick off with a decent size hook bait. I'm going to kick off with a 14 MXB2 just to get a feel for what's there. The last thing I really want to do is go hooking a decent fish first, second cast and losing it. So that's what I'm going to be doing, and I'm going to kick off with a 75cm hook length, and this is 013 breaking strain, which breaks at about £4. So I'm starting off as positive as I ever have done on this venue. I wouldn't find an occasion when I'd have to go any more positive or stronger lines and hooks than this, but it just gives me that option if I do hook a fish early on, and if it is going to fish better than we thought, then I shall be leaving it on. But I've also then got the option to scale it down. So I'm going to kick off with double dead red maggot on the hook, size 14, and that's a 75cm hook length. I'm going to kick off. There's not much flow here today, it's very low, or it's a natural or normal level. There isn't any extra water in. It is deep, probably looking at 14 feet out there. 20g feeder should be enough. Okay, it's a plastic feeder, so I want to get my feed down on the deck, and I'm just going to fish from the off. I'm not going to put any feeder fulls out there. I've got my hook bait on, I'm going to fish from the first cast, and I'm going to kick off with just 4 or 5 live red maggots. I've got some pinkies, I'm going to put a couple of pinkies in there and a tiny bit of choppworm, and just get a feel for what's there for that first half hour. Because there's not much flow, you can probably see the angle of the feeder arm. I don't need the rod right up in the air where you're getting neck ache. You can have it at a nice comfortable low kind of position, because you're not trying to keep the line off the water as much, because there's not as much flow, so it's really nice comfortable fishing. And like I say, I can only just, that's it, time! I can just about see the angler's net at the next peg, so I should be able to see his landing net go out if he catches any. And that's the biggest size feeder that I'm going to use. If anything, I will be scaling that down. Just got 1.5 ounce tipping. That's all we need. Might even get away with 1 ounce, to be honest, but 1.5 ounces will definitely be alright. And that is it. Not going to time casts to start with, but just try and stay a little bit active. And that's just tightened up nicely. It's just enough flow to take that little bit of a bend out. I'm fishing a free running rig, and that's just tightened up nicely. So that's it. Get a feel for what's there. That's 3 casts I've had now. I haven't had a sign yet, which is not brilliant, obviously, but it's also telling me that there aren't loads and loads of small fish there, which for the match that I want to fish is good. So I'm just going to stay active like this with this feeder on for a bit longer. doesn't produce anything in the next, 15-20 minutes, I'll scale the feeder down, just so I'm not putting quite as much bait in. I had a tiny little indication then, but it didn't materialise. I haven't seen any fish caught yet. It's about 6 casts I've had now with that feeder on. I'm going to put a couple of, probably a nice bright pinky on to go with that red maggot. Give it a bit of colour. Don't want to go mad with the feed, I want to be confident, but when I fished that Winter League on here a few years ago, like I said, sometimes you only need a £2 to win your section. I don't think it's going to be that hard. But if it is going to be hard and we're only fishing for 2 or 3 skimmers, then I don't want, to go piling loads and loads of bait in. But we've been fishing now for 30 minutes. I've had that one tiny little indication which never developed. There was no sign on the bait. So other than that, I haven't had a sign. I've gone through double red maggot, bits of worm, bits of pinky. I've currently got the head of a dendrobina on now. I've still got that size 14 hook on. Like I say, it's not showing us that there's any fish there at the moment, so I'm going to give this cast another couple of minutes just to see if there's a perch there or a bonus fish while I've got that 14 on. I haven't seen or heard another fish caught. The lad to my left now, downstream, he's already on his, it looks like he's on the whip already now, so he's put the feeder down, and I can't see as many feeders going in either up and down, or hear them, so that would to me suggest that most people have had a couple of casts on the feeder, not caught, so they've gone on their float lines. So I haven't seen or heard of a fish being caught, so I'm going to fish this out with this head of a dendron, and if I don't get anything, I'm going to switch to that other hook length, which again is 0.13, but it's a size 16 hook. It's a finer hook, and I'm just going to try and catch anything. See, put a couple of pinkies on and just go down a bit more of a refined approach. And I'm going to take that feeder off that I've got and switch to a smaller feeder and just fish for a bite, because if it is going to be hard, then I want to really cut back on the amount of feed I'm putting in. Well, I haven't had a sign on that, so I'm going to switch to that lighter hook pattern and smaller size already. It's looking like it's going to be a tough day. That's the piece of worm that I had on, head of a dendra. So I'm just going to switch that hook length, that lighter, well, it's a smaller hook, but it's a lighter hook as well. Just going to change that feeder, so I'm switching from that size to that size. Alright, much more refined. It looks like it's going to be certainly a slow start. It could be a slow match. So I've already got these tied up. This is not the kind of river where you can really cast across. You're not really hooking chub and things like that. There are 1 or 2 chub here, but not enough to target. And the ones you get there aren't huge fish. There are the odd carp in here as well, but generally it's roach, skimmers, the odd bream, lots of perch as well, but that's about it. The chances of hooking something that's going to, on an 0.13 hook length, which breaks at £4, that should pretty much land anything that we're going to hook. So it's not that kind of a river where you might be hooking barbel and things, so it's less of a risk scaling down with tattle on this stretch. And where I'm fishing, it's really clean, so it's not like I'm fishing or trying to keep fish away from snags and things. So let's see if this gets us a fish. Much more smaller, lighter plop. It's much more discreet. I'm hardly seeing any feeders going in now down there, which either means people are not casting them very often and they're sitting and waiting, which means they're not catching on it, or it means they've put it down and they're already on the float lines. That looked like a fast knock straight away. It was a really fast knock. It's a definite indication straight away on that smaller hook. Good morning, ducks. There we go, have some breakfast. I've just switched to a live red maggot, just a single one, just to see if there's anything there. And I've got one. What we got? A little perch. There we go. We're off the mark. First cast on single red maggot. Well, that's avoided the blank anyway. So what I'll do now is I'll keep that on. I know it's not a big fish. I've just seen the angler on my left. He's fishing a long whip to hand. It's probably about 7-8 meters to hand. I've just seen him swing a fish in about an ounce, and that's it. Now, whilst I can't see the other anglers, I can see downstream, and I'm hardly seeing anybody cast a feeder in or anything. Nothing. So if they are still on the feeder, they're not catching. Obviously just chucking it out and sitting and waiting for, you know, bigger fish. So whilst I can't see the anglers, if they were catching, I'd be able to tell by the frequency of the feeders going in, if that makes sense. I'll have a couple more casts with this. If it means I've just got to take some small fish, then I will do. So it's still early days. We're just over an hour in, and it's an incredibly slow start. I've just got that one little perch. Lad on my left, I think he's got one roach. He's missed a bite. He's on the whip. Lad up to my right, I don't know if he's gone on the pole now, but he's got one perch, and that is it. I've not heard anything else other than one or two people saying that they seem to think they might be catching more further downstream. I don't know how far down, I haven't got a clue, but there certainly aren't many feeders going in down to my left, but they might be catching on the float if they are. But certainly this bit here is very, very hard. I think that was an indication then. I've just slowed it down on that last cast. I put 2 dead reds on, still got a 16 on, and I slowed it down. I just thought I'm going to leave it 10 minutes. And in that 10 minutes, I bet I've had 5 indications. Single touches, only like that. Never kind of developed or materialised. They weren't quick little rattles, they were just single, which to me is telling me that there are fish there. I know no one's really catching, but there's fish around where I'm putting my feeder at the moment. Now I don't know what size they are, they might be small fish, but it's giving me enough information to tell me that there are 1 or 2 fish there. But I've had that before on here. I haven't fished here for probably 5 years in a winter match. But when that happened, you know, sometimes there were small fish, but sometimes there were proper big skimmers. But it's enough to tell me that there's fish there, so I've cut right back on the feed now. I'm literally putting 2 maggots in each cast and a tiny pinch of chopped worm. And I've kept that 16 on, and I'm just going to slow it down now, leaving it in longer. It's obviously going to fish hard, but like I say, these fish, we might not need many today. And like I said, they might be small fish, but they could be proper fish as well. I honestly can't tell from the bites, but there's definite indications that there's fish there. So I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing, but just slow it down now. Just slow it down, cast in less frequently. And I'll also, the other option as well is to switch to a bomb as well, which will be even more discreet. And I can put that slightly downstream as well if it's a case of nicking off single fish. But the good thing is at the moment is that the float and pole and whip lads aren't running away with it, because it's obviously not that sort of a day just here. So it looks like the feeder's going to be able to compete. Well, I've no idea how much of that you got on film because this camera has just switched off, it's so cold. That's a 4-pounder. when I said I was getting those indications, I said there could be small fish, I said there could be proper fish. That was a proper pull. That's got to be £4, that's a mega fish. Double dead red maggot. But I'm going to carry on doing exactly what I'm doing. Just slow it down, be patient. If those fish are cold, which they are, and they're very wary, I don't want to keep crashing that feeder in. So I'm just going to be very patient, just keep doing what I'm doing. Well, it was a tiny little indication, and I just came off it. I think it was foul hooked, I really do. It wasn't a big fish, but I'm sure it was foul hooked. That was an indication. There's one or two fish there now, to be honest. Just got to be careful not to blow it. Trying to be careful not to feed too much. I want to feed enough to kind of keep them there. I don't think there's a lot of fish there. But if they are proper fish like that one I've just had, and they are going to give you liners and indications if they're around the rig. You keep it slow. Slow it down. Little indication there. And again, nothing there. Don't know if they're small fish or not. They're not busting the bait. Definitely enough to pick up on. Spun up a little bit. I think one of them maggots has kicked off a little bit. Just going to wait for a more positive bite on this cast. If they are liners and fish that are touching the rig, the last thing I want to do is go pricking them and spooking, because if they are proper fish like that, obviously I don't want to spook them out the peg or risk foul looking one. Roach. So there are small fish there as well. But we are 2 hours in, and I'm not really getting an idea of what's been caught elsewhere. I think on my left he's struggling, he's gone back on the feeder, and on my right I'm still on that same as what I was doing. So I've got now there are 2 hours gone, so I've got that little tiny perch, I've got a little tiny roach, and then I've got that bream, and that is it. I had 2 or 3 indications after I caught that bream, and I'm sure there were more fish there. I'm not saying they were all big bream, but I think there were still 1 or 2 quality fish there. And what can happen sometimes is, because there's a bit of activity, you cast in. I had a couple of indications what I picked up on, and I didn't really connect with anything, but I think it must have just spooked them, whatever they were. So I had about 5 casts then without anything, and then I've just had a little roach. That's a little indication there, so maybe 1 or 2 fish have come back. I think there's 1 or 2 small fish there, but I'm not hearing what's happening at all. I think him on my left has still got 1 little roach, and him on my right, I don't know if he's just got 1 perch, but I think they're struggling, and nobody's casting him frequently, so you know, they're not catching loads of fish. So I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing and trying to convert every indication into a fish in the net. That's the key thing, and hopefully 1 or 2 of, you know, those bites what I hit are going to be bonus fish. I don't want to go back up to a 14 and be way selective for bigger fish if there are bigger fish, more bream like the one I've got out there. I don't want to be that selective. I don't think that's the answer at the moment. So just keeping that 16 on, really fishing for bites. But with this kit, you know, hopefully if I hook any more fish like that, you know, I should land any bonus fish that I hook. So I'm just going to keep going on what I'm doing, putting a tiny bit of chop worm in, and just 2 red maggots each cast. That is it. I think there's enough ground bait, enough attraction in the ground bait to keep some fish there. but you know, they're obviously not going mad today, so I don't want too much free food out there because I want my hook bait to stand out. Well, we're 3 hours in now, and it's gone really iffy. I started getting on single maggot and double maggot, started getting little fish bites, sharp knocks, missing the odd one. When I did hook one, it was only a small fish, and you know when you kind of think, I'm not going to get enough of these, you know, even if I can work them out, there's not enough there to build a weight. And one of the lads has just walked round now, Ian. He's walked all the way up. It says Andy Clark on the first peg's got a couple of fish, but the best he's heard is 6 skimmers, which is 10 pegs that way. So he's got 6 skimmers up to £2, I think he says. That's on peg 21, which is 10 pegs downstream. But that is the last peg where everybody's catching down there apparently. They're catching loads of roach. Where we saw the roach topping this morning when we were walking up, they're all catching on the float down there, so there's a lot of roach being caught. Somebody's got 30-40 roach on the float, so but up here the lads fishing the float here can't really get a bite. So I could try and just fish for anything, try and fish for my section, but I don't want to do that. This is just an open match. It's not a league match, it's not a qualifier. So what I've just done is I've just gone back to that original hook length, the positive hook length that I started off on. It's 0.13, but it's a bigger hook. It's a size 14 MXB2 instead of the 16. So I've taken the 16 off, I've gone on to a 14. And what I'm going to do is, I mean, I've had a bream £4. I'm sure there were better fish there for the next 15-20 minutes after I caught that fish with the indications that I had. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to fish for better fish now. I am going to be more selective. See, that was a bite then, but it's just really fast, small fish. So I'm just going to load the hook up. I'm going to fish with double and triple maggot and put pinkies on, bunches of pinkies, bits of worm, and just try and be a lot more selective now, just to try and pick out a better fish, because I want to win the match. It'd be nice to win the section, but if they're catching down there, then we're going to need to catch quite a bit more than what I've caught. And I think the only way I'm going to get that weight is going to be with quality fish, not numbers. So that's it. I'm going to slow it all down. I'm going to stay quite positive with the feed I'm putting in, some chopped worms, some maggots, but just be a little bit patient, sit on my hands. See, that's a better bite. Nothing there. There are small fish still there, so I'm going to have to load that hook up, I think. They are there. They are there. Well, we're just coming into the last hour, and there's been a definite change in the river, definite on these pegs. That's a fish. They're the ones. There's been a definite change in the river, certainly on this stretch just here. I'm suddenly seeing, well, certainly for this last half hour, there have been fish topping, just like what we saw this morning, further downstream, 20 pegs further down. There were fish, little fish topping, and we haven't seen any here until this last 30 minutes, and all of a sudden there are little roach topping, and the lads either side of me have started catching roach on the pole. They're not going mad, but they're catching where they weren't catching at all. They're catching odd fish now. So what we've basically done is I've gone back to a longer hook length, still got a 14 on. I'm loading the hook up. I need better fish. And since I switched back to that longer hook length, for whatever reason, I'm not even going to try and work out why, I've had 2 of those net fish just like that one. I've had 2 in 3 casts, sitting and waiting. And since I put my rod down, I had my rod up in the air earlier on, I was getting lots of little indications which was telling me there were fish around the feeder. But since I put my rod down towards, so it's more like a conventional zone fish in a still water, the rod down, I'm not getting as many indications. So I can only think that because my rod was up in the air, because it's going down 14, 15, 16 feet down or wherever it is, the line must be going through those layers where there's 1 or 2 fish milling about. So since I put my rod down, I'm not getting those tiny little indications. But I'm literally just sitting on my hands now, these last 3 casts. Since I had that longer hook length, just sitting, being patient, just waiting for a proper bite. And that's what's happened twice out of 3 casts. So we're just going into the last hour, and I'm hoping I'm going to get some more of those skimmers now, because they're what I need. These lads are catching roach now either side of me. So I've got 4 net fish now. So I'm really hoping that this, what I've just done now, being patient, putting the rod down, longer hook length, bigger hook bait, and sitting on my hands, a combination of all those is going to result in some net fish now, going into this last hour. Time! That's it. Well, fishing wise, that ended up much better than what I expected. I had to keep bringing the changes, but like I say, I haven't fished here for about 8 months, and it is winter now. It's a freezing cold river, so sometimes you don't really know what to expect. Started off negative, and that didn't really work, but nobody was catching, so I was very reluctant to push the peg. Thankfully I caught that 4-pounder early on by fishing negative, but then that was it. It's not really got going at all. It was only when I kind of got, I heard that Ian said that they caught some skimmers and they were catching much better down there, further downstream, that I've changed my game and just been a bit more positive, a bit more aggressive, and the fish have responded to it in spells. They weren't there all the time, but it's nice when you make a change like that and it works. The longer hook length was better than the short hook length. I don't know why that was, I still don't know now, but because I was waiting quite a while for bites anyway, so you'd think a short hook length wouldn't really make any difference, but the longer one was better. And I've just fished that one line all day, but I don't know how it's going to compare to everyone else, because I haven't heard anything for this last 2 hours. So I'm pleased with what I've caught. I just hope it's going to be enough. Well, I weighed a little bit less than what I possibly thought. I was hoping I'd got 20 pounds, just over 20 pounds, but they've actually weighed 18 pounds. But compared to where I am, I'm certainly not going to complain at that. I've learned quite a few things today. It's been a very interesting match, as you've seen. Lots of changes have had to be made, but I think at times there have been lots more fish in front of me than what I've actually caught. Whether that is the same all the way through the length or not, I don't know, but when you're getting indications, I think sometimes there are more fish there than we realise. It's been a very interesting match. I've enjoyed it. This is the first live match I've done for about a year, so it's been good to get back and good to catch a few fish, especially during January. So thanks for watching. Hope you've enjoyed this live match, and I look forward to seeing you next time.